There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. He's been Rum Tum Tugger in 4 different productions of Cats, including the 3rd and 4th U.S. tours, and on Broadway in 1993. So welcome, BK Kennelly, and thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much. Great to be here.
So I'm really excited to talk to you because I know you've been in a couple different productions, including the, on Broadway earlier on, not the revival and the original. And I want to talk a little bit about just Cats in the 80s, like what it's like, because for me, everybody that I've talked to mostly, or most of the people I've talked to, the frame of reference is the 1998 movie. That was like part of their childhood or they've part of the revival, but it's a different beast when there's no social media, the internet's not really alive. So tell me about what was Cats like at that point in time? Like, is it, someone called it the Hamilton of, musicals at that point?
Well, yeah, it was pretty much that. We had, when you think about Broadway at that point in time, a lot of shows, you didn't even, some earlier, like 5 years earlier, they didn't even have 5 shows up for best musical or best, some shows closed before the Tony Awards. So it was in rough shape. And, Angelo Weber came in, man, and started just doing his thing. And really, the show was huge. I remember grew up in Miami, and when we were touring, Miami had, the theater, they were using the Center of Performing Arts down in Miami. TOPA is what it's called. And we were there for 5 weeks. It had 4,000 seats, 8 shows a week, and we sold out in 48 hours.
Wow. 4,000 seats.
4,000 seats. It's a huge,
it's a huge theater.
Oh yeah. This is where shows make their money on tour, not on Broadway.
Okay.
So, yeah. But, and we were selling out everywhere we went. It was so amazing to see how popular the show was and how everybody wanted to see it. And the cool thing about it was a lot of women wanted to see the show. So they bring their husband to see the show, and the husband's like, oh gosh, oh man,
Yeah.
And
then McCavity's, the son McCavity comes on, and they're in.
Right. And then you see all these incredible people and bodies and amazing costumes. And people are like, wow, this is crazy. You didn't have to sit through too much in a show. Like some people, you have to really learn how to go to the theater and be in the theater. And this show brought everybody to the theater. I remember we played San Antonio, and there's the Majestic Theater in San Antonio. And the owners of the theater put up the last amount of money they had to get Cats to come in. We sold that thing out and basically saved the theater. It was going to be a parking lot 6 months later if this guy couldn't make it happen. And he did. And that to me showed the real power of the Cats at that time.
Yeah.
And the teaser for them, always just seeing the eyes with the dancer's eyes, that's all you ever saw. Everything was like, what is this? What is this? And the music was crazy. It was, all this. I love the show. I was, it was a dream come true to be in the show, especially Tugger. I mean, come on, but people didn't know what the show was about. And, we didn't have, marquees out there of anything but those eyes. And that was it. And they kept that suspense going, which was, I thought, pretty genius. I mean, we had, 18-wheelers with Cats on tour and the 2 eyes on the back doors. That was it. So
and
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of a fascinating piece of thinking back to the 80s where there's no social media. It's just a buzz. And you were the first tour that went to a lot of major cities, that left some of these hubs.
Yeah.
And so it was, I guess, what was it like every time you got to a new city? It sold out. It was, people were ready to go, but was there like a confused buzz, or was it like, what was that reaction?
Well, it's very interesting because people wanted to know what the show was about. So they used to send me, and I used to do, I don't know if you're too young, but there were these shows called PM magazines. They were the shows that were on after the news. They were like Inside Edition and stuff like that. They were called PM magazines. And you'd go, and they were local shows, and I would talk to, get interviewed. And some of the reviewers kind of were mad at me in a sense. It was like, well, because they couldn't, it didn't matter what they said. The show was already sold out 6 months ago. Yeah. So they really had no, they were always cool and kind and gave us great reviews. The show was great. It was something that, nobody ever saw. People are crawling around, coming out into the audience, breaking that fourth wall at times. And, the opening of the show, the entire cast is looking at one person,
scaring people,
scaring. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. But it was a show like no other. And I don't think people were ready for it. And that was the cool part of it.
So how did you explain it? Like, what was I guess you didn't really have to have a sales pitch because you're already sold out, but what was your kind of like pitch to the crowd of like, hey, come check this out? Cause it's definitely, it's hard to explain. Trust me, I'm 40 episodes deep trying.
Yeah. Well, boy meets girl. No, just kidding. Yeah. It's funny because the director that I was lucky enough to be directed by, David Taylor, and we had David Taylor, T. Michael Reed, and Stanley Lebowski putting the show together. They really took their time with us to say, okay, this is what the story is about. Think about redemption. Think about, we've all done certain things in our life, and some have regrets, some don't. Some, like when I played Tugger, I knew I was the party guy. I didn't want to go to the Heaviside Lair. I'm having too much fun. Mm-hmm. Who will it be? Right. But the whole story about Grizabella, I remember hearing direction one time, and I think it was David who said, if we were humans, Grizabella would be the woman sitting at the end of the bar.
Okay, interesting.
And she's got a cigarette in front of her. She's just kind of, you look at her and you go, oh, it's not the years, it's the mileage. And when he said that visual of a barfly, somebody who was very glamorous, very pretty, but just, made some decisions in her life that really didn't go over. You know what I mean? So people would ostracize her because of those decisions, which makes the show that much more powerful, when everybody turns their back on her, literally in the show.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Victoria, the white cat,
buys the first round.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There she goes. But she's pure. She's it. And she's the one who's going to, make that connection. Mm-hmm. So
So what was told to you about Tugger? I mean, obviously it's fun and you don't feel like you're even up for the Heaviside Layer, but I know you were given him some backstory. What were you told about relationships to other cats and about him?
Well, the cool thing, if you think about it, I was lucky enough when the show first started, I was actually a swing. Mm-hmm. So I did Tugger, Monk, Buster Jones, Gus, the theater cat, and Mungo Jerry. So I did 4 roles that are
wide range.
Yeah, kind of crazy. And then I took over Tugger at the year because the guy, Andy Spangler, left the company. So they gave it to me, which was really cool. But I got to do and see the show literally from a lot of different angles and playing a lot of different cats. One's a kitten to the old cat to Monk and Tugger, and
who kind of don't like each other, right? Like a little.
Well, it's
little
funny
annoyance,
because
I think.
They say what I was told by David and Tom and Stanley was Monk and Tugger are old dudes kids.
Yeah, brothers,
Right.
right?
So they're brothers. You could tell, like, I have his wig in a sense.
Yeah.
Monk has his colors, you know what I mean? And there's that conservative guy. Monkastrap is very, I don't want to say militaristic, but he's very, order, peaks and follicles. Let's go. I'm going to keep everything. I'm going to control everything. And Tugger's like, dude, chill out, man. Relax. Let's have some fun. So I used to run on stage at any given time, run around Old Deuteronomy and split. Just, never pulling focus. Like I wouldn't do it during Gus, Growl Tiger, or anything like that. But there were certain times, like during the Jellicle Ball, that I just come out there and screw with somebody and go and leave. And it'd make people go like, what? But that was Tugger, man. Let's party. Let's, let's rock on and have some fun. And yet the serious side of that was protecting Old Deuteronomy, especially when McCavity comes out.
Yeah.
Now Tugger is the fake McCavity on top of the I'm dressed as McCavity. I don't have my wig on. It's after Pirates. I put on McCavity's, unitard and mask. So I'm the first fake McCavity as he's coming in, disguised as Old Deuteronomy. So unfortunately, I couldn't be out there as Tugger to be part of the protection, which would have been
probably
a little
fitting.
different. But
So tell me about the relationship with Tugger and Mistopheles.
Again,
there's a lot of fan fiction that's a little non-PG about the two of them.
There you go. Well, I was lucky enough to do it with some incredible guys that I do love, you know what I mean? And we're always close. A lot of Tugger was, and I think this comes from Terry Mann and the way he did it, and his look was very much Mick Jagger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But then they said it's kind of a, how do I say this? Androgynous part of him. Yeah. And Tugger is a party animal. So let's party, know, and that was part of the, all show. Like I got the answers, Tugger is finally the answer to the show. It's like, wait, listen to me and don't scoff. I mean, it's the only, when you think about it, there's very few spoken words in the show. And that is it. And that's the time where Tugger is serious. The only one time of the show. And then he gets to, woohoo.
Yeah.
And he gets to be, there you go. So, it's
there's a lot. There's a lot there. I mean, it's like
so many layers of almost devoted followers in some ways, with the fans, with the girls, and some of the guys, and a lot of they always told the guys, especially the big boys, the Alonzos, the McCavities, or Plato when he's not McCavity. You want to be him, but you're not, you know what I mean? So it's jealousy. And then it's all of a sudden we get together and we party, within the Jellicle Ball itself. There's the big boys dance that, I lead, but they're behind me. But even in the end of the number, there's, the big boys, Alonzo, McCavity, and, Plato, sorry. We had a lot of moments that we kind of put in. I sit on them. It's built in the choreography, but it's I swoosh them away at one point in time, and then we're having a good time together at another point in time. So it's almost a follower type of deal. Like I'll be the leader, but not like Monkastrap, if that makes sense.
There's a little bit of a playful annoyance.
Yeah.
In there. But I do kind of find just the fact that there's so many people that have like super fans that have like analyzed the relationships and the staging and where everyone is and what that means. And if they're together or they're brother and sister or they're son, dad, like there's so many different productions and variations. And with each one comes minor nuances that there is zero way to map out what would be a cat's family tree. There's people who've tried. I've done my attempt at it. But I kind of find it really interesting just to hear even you say like, look, this is how we had this, but it's because of this is the nature of this character. And so that's why this kind of comes out, why you see it and why you can interpret it that way.
Right.
Talk to me about so you went on the third US tour and you also went on the fourth one, but then you went to Broadway and you kind of stayed Tugger through the whole thing. Mm-hmm. What was it like going in between each production?
You have to be respectful of who's in charge. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of times somebody who's done the show before will come in and say, well, that's not the way I was told, and that's not fair to the person who's in charge at that point in time. They may have something to add that's a little different, and it freshens it up for you to come in to do the show. We did, when we started, we rehearsed for, I think, almost a month.
Mm-hmm. The
and
cat
part
school,
of it,
right?
Cats, yeah. And we only had one person who had done the show before. This was the Gus, and that was Richard Poole. He's fantastic. He's was doing Phantom before this COVID thing, but he led the way and never, he just was like, yep, this is where we're going to do it. But we were doing cat exercises where we were crawling around. We had to stop and stare at something for like 15 minutes, like a cat would, and just be quiet and stare at an object. And it was, as we're all kind of glancing at each other, kind of laughing, what the hell are we doing,
Yeah.
And then when you go into a company where people didn't do that exercise, you could see there was a difference in how they were a cat. And it was pretty amazing to see that they thought they embodied the cat a certain way. And it wasn't until seeing people who didn't have the luxury of those exercises for that long for doing those things, their mannerisms were totally different. They were kind of copying the person they saw, as opposed to what we were doing. When you're part of the original company, we were there doing it. You were discovering those little things.
Yeah, finding it from
and then
within you.
And the way you crawled across the set and, living, breathing, sniffing each other or, going up to one another. And it takes down that wall. There's no, like, other people will look at you who didn't do that and go, what are you doing? And there's just a sense of, because everybody had to do it, regardless of who you were. The entire company did it. And it didn't matter what cat you were, you had to embody that. And that was, at first we were like, this is silly, this is ridiculous. Yeah. But then when we got on our feet, no pun intended, it was a difference. It made the difference of the show. Mm-hmm. And then each show has its own personality, each company, I should say. When I was brought into the fourth national, it was a smaller set, because we would go, the third national had a really big set, and we had to be at a place a minimum of 2 weeks because it took so long to do the load in. It would have killed the crew. The crew couldn't do it. So, and it was so popular, we stayed multiple weeks everywhere. Then the fourth national was actually considered a bus and truck. And we would do split weeks. That set could go up in 8 hours. And it was a lot different. It didn't have the rake. It was, the tire was cherry pick, was more of a lift that would roll out and go straight up and then come down and then go back. So it was almost like a man lift. So when I went into the fourth national, they were changing over 3 principals. So 3 contracts were up. So it was Old Deuteronomy, Grizabella, and Tugger. So they said, you just go into the company because we want you. You've done the show. We love what you do. So go there and just go for 6 months till so we can worry about the other 2 cats. I was like, great. And David Taylor was still the director at that point in time. So got in the company and remembered the show, which amazed me, but I did so many, performances, but that the dance captain, Chuck Lubeck, and I were throwing a football around, just talking about the show. And poor Kathleen Marshall was the assistant dance captain. And she was, finally, I'm going to learn Tugger's track. And we really didn't do it. We were playing football most of the time. And she was like, come on, guys. And we just talked through the show, but had a blast. But and that company was great too. It's so fun because especially like when a swing comes on or an understudy, they go on, they do the show a little differently. Which should change your show if you're into it, because they say something different or they react a certain way, or and that's that to me always kept it alive and fun. And we had in the 4th National, I remember we had the flu going through the company, and more people got sick to where we had to cut 2 cats from the show one night. And the dance captain, Chuck Lubeck, he was doing like 4 different guys, all their specialties, because he had to be in that spot. Because we didn't have enough people on stage.
Wow.
So it was pretty crazy. Yeah.
Like 2 cockroaches instead of a line of them.
Yeah. It was insane. Yeah. But, hey, you do what you do.
Yeah. And so then you go to Broadway.
Yes.
Right. So that's after the 4th National Tour. That
was after the 4th. Yep. And
you're coming into, it's probably 10 years at this point running, right? Is that around?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so what is the, how much rehearsal time do you get for something like that? Or did very little just because the track?
Right. So you work with the dance captain and they put you into the show. And then you have, I think I had 2 rehearsals maybe with,
2.
one. Yeah.
Wow.
One. I mean, I rehearsed with the dance captain in music and they just say, well, this is where it is, because that set is so much part of the theater. One of the entrances is where the box used to be, Tugger slides down and does So that was just learning the ropes, backstage and where you're entering and how different this set was, because it was, the whole, didn't see the revival, but the whole back wall comes down for the pirate ship in the original. So you're riding this wall down. So you're standing on this wall and it's lowering down as a pirate, and you're riding the wall down and,
So that is, I don't think in the revival. Yeah. Because I think they cut out Growl Tiger.
Oh, wow.
In the revival. I'm probably, again, the wrong person to be trying to differentiate between the different companies. Yeah. But I don't think that's in the revival. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so then this is where I want to ask a few questions. The fourth tour is it Germany?
No, I did the Hamburg company. So after Broadway, I went and David was in charge of Hamburg, and he said, look, I need you to go. They need a Tugger in Hamburg. Can you go do it? And I was like, yeah, it'd be kind of fun, And this is after I left Broadway, and they when I got there, the company, they do changeovers in the company. So every year they had kind of a changeover if they didn't offer certain people a role. So they brought a guy in, and he just wasn't, I didn't know him because he left before I got there. He just wasn't doing it what they wanted. And I don't know the whole story behind that. So they brought me in and they said, okay, I was doing, I had already signed a contract to do another show. So what I had to do is I flew to Germany. He called me like on a Thursday and I flew Sunday night to Germany. Flew to Germany. I was there for 2 weeks, had to come back home, and I did Crazy for You here in LA for 8 weeks. And then I flew back to Germany to continue rehearsing
Wow.
and be put in the show. And they gave me, and the show's in German. So you have to do the whole show in German.
So
And it's brutal. Yeah.
I was gonna say, so this is that I was kind of fascinated because I've seen like there are productions all over the world, obviously, but how did you learn your like the German? Do you speak German? Like, did you just learn it on the fly? Like,
well, it's so funny because I got two great stories about Germany. First of all, I go there and they say, okay, you just do the show. My first rehearsal, they said, we want to see you do the show, the number. So you do Tugger in English and we'll do it in German because that's these. So I said, okay, which was kind of strange. And so now, here I come into the show and everybody, give me this look like, you better have the goods, pal. You know what I mean? Because it was a little like, okay. And, I came in and just was, I did the show for so long and it was always so much fun. I mean, it's a dream come true role. I mean, I love it. And the support I got and the people I met all over the world and the road, it was just fantastic. So I go in there and I do my thing and this cast just exploded afterwards. They were so like, dude, So we had a blast. Lifelong friends. I still talk to friends. And this was truly an international company. And we had one thing in common. The common denominator was trying to learn the show in German. Now there was a European tour. They had it worse. They did German and English. They would do it different performances would go in different languages. So they would do a German performance and an English performance. And for us, the people who originally wrote Cats in German for Hamburg actually did what's called Hochdeutsch, which is High German, which is basically Shakespeare. So we were doing the show with some words in it and people looking at us like, why are you guys speaking like this? It wasn't conversational German, you know what I mean? And it was really tough to get the German down to really, and you want to be great at what you're doing, obviously. Yeah. And I had done the show, so I knew every word in the show, doing multiple characters, every beat of the show. And you would go into a room, you'd sit at a desk, and Margot, who was about 6'2", German, and she was, BK, the Tugger has to be good. I said, yes, I will. I promise you. And we had to speak the entire show to her. And she gave you her blessing to go on. So you would speak the show, you would sit there and word perfect the show of what you did, for Tugger. I only had to do what I had to do. And then you would work with the conductor and then the dance supervisor. So it was brutal. Now, having said that, this was truly an international cast. We had a guy from Russia, Hungary, Brits, Aussies. We had a Kiwi from New Zealand. He was our dance supervisor.
Do you have any Germans?
What's that?
Any Germans? Anybody that spoke it naturally? Not a single person.
We had, I think they said there were 2 in the run that were, because they just were not into musicals at that point in time. So they nurtured that. But we had, lots of folks. So I remember coming back to the show, and my Mistopheles was from Liverpool, and his father was Scottish. Okay, and he said, "BK, how you doing, man? Did you have it?" And it was like, dude, I can't even understand your English, let alone your German. You know what I mean? And we all had a big dressing room. All the guys were in the dressing room, and I remember I had a guy to my left who is from Kentucky, who was one of my covers, and this Mistopheles, Carl, to my right. And there were times that I was the interpreter for both of them. Because the other guy was like, BK, I can't understand a word he's saying. And then Mistopheles like, BK, what the fuck is that guy talking about? I don't know. It was so funny. And we would get on stage, and I remember I couldn't do it. I said, I'm failing. I'm not going to be able to do German. I can't do it. I remember walking after one of my lessons, walking backstage, and it's during the Jellicle Ball, and Carl Mustaflis comes running off, one of his excellencies, BK has a foot and going. And I'm like, well, man, this German is kicking my ass. He goes, if I could do it, anybody could do it. I was like, Carl, yeah, you're right. Yeah. What am I so hung up on, So I wound up next day saying, okay, I do a lot of accents. I've done voiceovers. I do a lot of accents. I decided I'm going to do my German with a German accent. That's what I'll do. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting across from Margot, and I start speaking. Sollte Mr. Mustaflis den Waren Sabachara fragen, darin gibt's keinen Zweifel. Bitte hört mich zu und lasst nicht. And I'm spitting on her, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she goes, no, sehr gut, spit sehr gut. I'm like, beauty. So I leave. The person coming in behind me go, how'd it go? I said, just spit on her, you'll be fine. And I walked out. But that's when it finally clicked. And yeah.
Could you still sing the song today in German?
Some of them, yeah. We have, let's see, Moonshine, dreh dich sagst du Moonshine, die Erinnerung fucht dich, komm mach auf und tritt ein. Findest du dort die wirkliche Bedeutung von Glück, ist ein neues Leben dein.
Wow.
And that's Act 2, the Moonlight, what's called not Memory, but Moonlight in top of Act 2. So, yeah.
It's kind of a harsh language. Does Memory translate? It's such a beautiful song in English. Mm-hmm. Does some of the German kind of language still translate into this kind of same powerful moment that hits?
Oh yeah. The Grizz is, were phenomenal. They had over there, like here we do 8 shows a week, and I'm used to doing 8 shows a week. Over there, you'd only have to do 7. You got to show off every week. And I was like, okay, well, and then I said, I could do 8. It doesn't bother me. It's not like a Mustaflis or the Kittens who, they have it rough, man. You're on your knees, they're crawling there. It's brutal. That show is, so their covers, and every company, the covers were amazing. These people are, watching folks just to get to do it. And their take on something. I had a guy, basically, when I went to Germany, I was like, this is it. I've done the show for 10 years now. I don't think I'm gonna, this is it for me. And I met this guy over there, and he was from Orange County, and he was my cover, and he was quintessential Tugger, man, like 6'2", good looking guy, incredible voice, could really move. And I was like, dude, you're the new Tugger. I'm going to pass this baton off to you. Yeah. He's the nicest guy in the world. And this is my other funny story from Cats. He was such a dude. He was like, oh man, all right, dude. Yeah, it's cool. He talked like this and everything. And when I flew back after my 8 weeks of doing Crazy for You here, I fly back, and Margot, I'm sitting in the audience with her. I had to watch the show, and I'm sitting with her, and it comes the time where Tugger has his line after McCavity, you ought to ask Mr. Mustaflis, the original Conjuring Cat. There could be no doubt about that. Please listen to me and don't scoff. And in German, I said it before, I'd say, sollte Mr. Mustaflis den Waren Sabachata fragen, darin gibt's keinen Zweifel. Bitte hört mich zu und lasst nicht. So I'm sitting there, and this guy's on, and he's like, ihr solltet Mr. Mustaflis den Waren fragen, darin gibt's keinen Zweifel. And I'm like, look at him like going, oh, he's a surfer dude. And I turn, and poor Margaret has a tear coming down. I look at her, I just pat her. I said, okay, yeah, Tugger has to be sehr gut. Yeah. So it was just crazy, but it was what it was, man. But what a great experience, living in Hamburg and meeting people from all over the world. It was great stories, great. And they did it differently. I mean, they changed some of the set. They changed some moves. We did things a little differently. And it just, for me, it was great because it was fresh. You know, it's like, ooh, a challenge to make what I do. Yeah, make it work. And
learning a new language.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah. Our conductor was from Martin Axe. He was from London. And there's part of they have a vowel. I don't know if you could call it a vowel, a sound that we don't make. It's not in the English language. And like our funny thing was ich liebe dich, which is I love you, you know. But when people say it, they say ich because it's ICH. Ich liebe dich, like that. And Martin said there's only one sound, the word huge. If you take that and add it to it, it takes the glottal stops out of it. It takes all these things. And it was so interesting to hear all of a sudden, again, one of those light bulbs that just go off. And I was like, dude, this is incredible, you know? And then, you know, you're in a foreign land, so you try to speak their language. You know, I'm not going to. So we had the guy who played Gus. He was an opera singer, and he was paying so many Deutschmarks to learn German, and everything German. And the biggest diss in Germany is when you walk into a bar or a restaurant and you order in German and they answer you in English. Yeah. That means your German sucks. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So every time he was Aussie, Bradley Daly, phenomenal tenor. And he would say, guys, I got this. Let me order. Okay. I'm like, okay, man, go for it. And he'd order. And every time if they answered him in English, the whole table would start cracking up, and he was just so frustrated. But it was great. I can
see you all going around just only saying your conversations in parts from the music. You know, it's like you don't know the language, but you know enough because you know the lyrics. They're just hoping you can answer with like someone's asking about something jellicle, and you're good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. That and a gross beer, bitte. Yeah. Just give me a large beer and I'm good. Yeah. We're all good. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to do a little rapid fire going into kind of my final question, which is, you know, the whole thesis of my podcast. But before we do that, let me ask a couple quick ones. So first one is, if you weren't Tugger, and maybe take out some of the other characters you covered, which just random character what track would you want to do? Ignoring, could you sing it or could you do it? Like, you just want to have fun. You're in the show. Which one would be kind of your dream one to just try?
Mistopheles. Yeah. And, you know, who wouldn't want to be Grizabella in the sense of it's a pivotal moment of the show.
Yeah.
I mean, every time she comes on stage, she stops the show dead in its tracks. And to have such power and just amazing. I got to do it in New York with Laurie Beecham and Liz Calloway. So I mean, you know, come on, it's a free concert every night with those guys.
Yeah,
you know, but the power that they brought to it, it was stunning. It was just, you know, and I saw Lilias White do it as well. I mean, dude, that would be the role, you know, if you could sing it and just you know, that would be great.
That's awesome. What about favorite song?
Actually, my favorite melody of the show is Old Deuteronomy.
Old Deuteronomy.
Yeah. I just think it's such a beautiful piece, especially in the Jellicle Ball, when he comes up on the stage and it's just sweeping and glorious. I don't know. For me, it's, you know, that's one of my favorites.
Love it. That's awesome. What about favorite character and least favorite character?
Ooh.
Not actors or people.
Yeah, that's
just like
that's great. Yeah. Oh, wow. It's so hard. That is a great question. Least favorite. Oh, I don't know, man. It's weird. Wow. I'd have to say I mean, just because he's the bad guy, McCavity, you know. And then when I played Monkastrap, the guy I did the show with was actually my roommate for a while, Dave Roberts, and he used to call me Mini Strap when I went on because I was smaller, and he used to throw me like, dude, we did these lifts. He just hurl me across the stage. So I'm going to say that one because he almost killed me.
Yeah.
But it's a great role. My gosh, he was so fantastic.
What about favorite?
Tugger.
Tugger,
yeah. You know, yeah. And you know, I don't know if you know who Bill Nolte is. Bill Nolte was an old Deuteronomy. And I remember he came into the company. He was with the First National. He came in to Cats 3. And I never rehearsed with him. We never, you know, and he came in and he sang The Moments of Happiness at, you know, top of Act 2. And oh my gosh, when he sang that song, you could hear a pin drop. It was so glorious and beautiful. I was like, wow. Just wow, you know, because he didn't try to sing it like an opera guy. It just flowed out of him. It was amazing. Those are the types of things I wish, you know, maybe they are out there, but is there copies of that? Like being able to see some of these like individual performances or songs, because there's just not a lot of reference past the 1998 movie, and then which is mostly what's on YouTube, and a little bit of the more recent stuff because of just you know, stuff being recorded or unfortunately bootlegged in some capacity. All right, so the final question. Or the $1 million question. We can cover a couple other things, but I have argued that I do not think Grizabella was the right cat to die at the end of the show. I've covered all my reasons why, but I want to hear, do you agree with me? And if so, who would you pick? And if not, what's the defense for Grizabella? Interesting. There you go. I always thought that it would be Gus, but if you didn't see Gus in the revival, it doesn't make sense.
Oh, Gus? No, Gus is the most common answer.
Yeah, you would think he would go. And then it was funny because somebody said, Old Deuteronomy.
Can he go, though?
Old Deuteronomy isn't going to leave because Monk and Tugger haven't figured it out yet. Because he is both of them. And, you know, Tugger, you need to be a little more serious. Monk, you need to lighten up. Between them, that's Old Deuteronomy. It really is his time to go.
But he's not, but he can't.
But he can't give it up yet because, you know, Looney Tune right and, you know, militaristic left, you know, on his left. I mean, but it was, you know, I again, having dear friends playing the role when you can antagonize someone that you love, it's awesome. You know, Randy Clements was one, and you know, Frank, he was great. You know, and I would just go out there and just poke at him, just keep poking the bear until
you have to have the most like entertaining, fun, probably the most improv allowed character in this show, and it's got to just be a blast to do every night.
Oh God! Oh yeah. Yeah, because like I said, and seeing it, which is great to do Monk and Tugger because the polar opposites. So when I sit looking at my buds doing Monk, I see, oh yeah. So let me take mine a little further. But then when I would go on for Monkastrap, I knew that I had to lay down the law and try, you know. And the funny thing is, they said Monk could never laugh at himself. You know, that's why the Peaks and the Pollicles are just when it gets out of control and everybody's pushing his buttons, he loses his crap. You know what I mean? And it's brutal because that song is so brutal to sing and do, and just the lyrics and how fast it goes. And if you start it too fast to the conductor when, you know, has dinner plans, you're screwed. You know what I mean? And I remember one night, Randy went up on his lines, and it was the pigs and the pelicans came out of his mouth, which was genius. So much fun. We never let him. And he was making nonsense sense and just talking so fast because, you know, people were going, what? Excuse me?
Yeah.
Can you talk into my sponge head? I don't think I got that, So, and then Mungo Jerry and Rumple Teaser are the two who come out and do the bark, 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 bark in the beginning. So now there I am as Mungo Jerry pushing his buttons as a kitten, being a goofball, so it was great to be able to do that. I would, it helped me as an actor to look at my role from a different perspective, which was great,
Before we go, tell me a little bit about, we did, and I was fortunate to play a small part helping out with promoting it a little bit, but there was the fundraiser you did back in October of 2020. Tell me a little bit about your cast kind of coming back together.
Well, I'll try to make it fast because I know we're probably running out of time, but we had an amazing company. Jonathan Cirillo was our Skimbleshanks, and he was fantastic. He, we had AIDS was taking a lot of our friends at that point in time. You're talking the 80s. I was going to a funeral a week when we got off the road. It was brutal. We lost some members of our company. I lost dear friends from other shows from the early 80s, and we just wanted to help any way we could. And being cats, we were the biggest thing. We had a voice. So we utilized that voice. And on Mondays, we would do fundraisers. So if we were in a town for 2 weeks, we would find a local AIDS hospice or a local AIDS organization. And our publicist, Jim Kerber, he was great. He set these up for us as well. And they used to take me, and like I said earlier, I'd fly to the new cities. And if we had an event coming up, that's when I would promote that event as well. So it was fantastic. We got an opportunity to raise money and it gave us a chance to do something other than the show. So we all performed. We did just fundraisers almost every Monday. And there were sometimes, I remember Kansas City, we were a year into the run of the show. It was September of 1987. And we did a tribute because we lost Michael Bennett. And then we lost Tom Reed. Sorry. He actually brought me into the company I did chorus line with Tom. So he means the world to me. He gave me this big break. So we did a Michael Bennett benefit in Kansas City for local hospice. And by the time we finished with the show, it was all Michael Bennett shows. This benefit performance, we had people weeping, screaming, standing. And as we left, we went out, we had our chorus line hats. We did, and then with one from chorus line. And people were emptying their pockets and throwing whatever change money into these hats. And we raised more money in one night than this Kansas City organization raised in a year.
Wow.
It was only, I think it was $46,000 or whatever. It was insane. We used to go to cabarets, bars. We would auction off tour jackets. And when I did the fourth national, we did the same thing in the fourth national. We picked it up and kept going. And we did skits. We did Who's on First, Abbott and Costello. Chuck Lubeck and Daniel Marcus did it, and it was absolutely hysterical. And people were, oh my gosh, we did Greater Tuna. My wig master and our Skimbleshanks did Greater Tuna. I don't know if you know that show.
I don't know that one.
Oh yeah, it's hysterical. So we did skits, we did all this stuff, but it was really just to raise money. So Jonathan calls us 30 some odd years later and says, hey, let's get together and do this. And it was just amazing because it brings back all those emotions, obviously, but it also is a way to give back. And by bringing the show up again, you relive what we did. And, again, the memory lives again. It does, and as corny as it sounds, I saw people I haven't seen in years, and now we're parents and some grandparents, and it's just wild. But again, this company was so giving, and it wasn't about ego. It was all about, let's go out there and have some fun, sing a song, and hang out at a bar with a bunch of people who want to see cats, without makeup on, and hear them sing other songs, and just to meet the cast. It was a great thing to do. But at the same time, utilizing the popularity of that show for even greater good, and we always had Nina Lannon worked for Really Useful at that point in time and wound up starting her own company. She was the general manager of the show, and her blessing, man, she was like, go, and let us utilize interviews that we were doing. I wasn't the only one. Everybody was doing them, but to promote these. And it was, it was just everybody giving, and the crew and the orchestra played. I mean, all of a sudden you go out to a club and you have an 11-piece orchestra just jamming, and these guys playing jazz and doing, what they do, outside of cats. It was amazing. It was, people again got to see that, but working that magic again for a greater good. And we raised a ton of money, and then just doing this last thing with the pandemic, knowing that, we can do it again. And because the show was the Hamilton of its time, it still has legs to where the reaction from people, and to see and hear our stories, and to watch all these folks trying to hit these high notes again, it's brutal, man. But it was great to see everybody, and just knowing that everybody was like, yeah, of course, and the hard work that they did, the people who put it together, Austin, Jonathan, Joanne Hunter, Brian Ronan, who mixed the show for us. I mean, that poor guy, he had, we just had Jay Alger. We put the music down and had a click track to where you would hear the intro, and then you would sing. So all Brian got while he's mixing the show were just our voices, no music. And he had these 34 people, and he had to mix these 34 voices. And the only thing we had was click, 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 that he could start, and he mixed it, and it came out great. Yeah. It sounded great. I was like, oh my gosh. So he's a magician. And then Jay Alger, Eddie Robinson. I mean, all these people came together. And again, selfless company. It was such a great, and we were all so young, and we didn't know what we were a part of at the point in time. Jonathan and I have had many conversations about this, going, who were we and how? And I got to see it from the outside, because being a swing, I was in the house every night watching the show, because you had to track all these cats. It's not like 42nd Street, the chorus comes out, they dance together, and you're either guy over here or guy over there. Man, with every crash and the cats scatter, okay, Bombi's going in front of you. You got to wait for Gus to go over here. Then you fly between them, and here's your exit. It was many sleepless nights. But being out in the house, standing next to the soundboard and listening to people and seeing the reaction for this show, and seeing people, we played Elmira, New York, a little theater. And I remember people lining up because we had the showers, but it was a theater that was in disarray. And we said, yes, it's perfect. We'll do it. So we would leave and shower basically at home. You'd clean up and then go back to the hotel. And we had a bus, and the bus was sitting there. And I remember us leaving this theater, and there were people in, oh gosh, I don't want to sound, but there were women in like ball gowns, and men in suits and like leisure suits. And, they were dressed to the nines for this show, and standing there, and the looks on their faces as we left, that power that this show had. And it was like they lined up from the stage door to the bus on either side of this pathway. And it was amazing. And knowing that, tapping into that amazing quality that this show has. And I love the show. People say, oh, it's corny. It's just, I love the music. You know, I had the album. Hello.
Yeah.
You know, that wax thing that goes around the ground. Yeah. Okay. I had the album because in that album, finally, I saw pictures of the show. But love the show and the power of the show and the fact that we could turn around and raise money to help people to unfortunately die with dignity in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And now, if we could do our little part to help people keep their insurance just in case they get sick. I mean, it's huge. And I, again, am very fortunate to be a part of this company I love dearly. And to know that, you know, we use our powers for good, you know, and to reconnect with these people and see these people, in this pandemic, that was like therapy. Mm-hmm. It gave me that sense of who I was when I was in my 20s doing this show. You know, we were all kids. We were all 20. We had 17-year-olds. I think the oldest person in our company may have been 30.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And we were all kids. And we didn't know. We just went out and did it. Well, just do it. Okay. Yeah. You know? And it's a tribute to David Taylor, T. Michael Reed, and Stanley Lebowski, that it never got bigger than us. And it was always about this show. And they gave us such great direction. And, you know, Stanley we'd be in rehearsals and Stanley would have his eyes closed. He was the musical director. And I remember looking at him, we were getting a cup of tea or something. And I said, Stanley, you have your eyes closed. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, because I have to listen to the show. I can't watch these amazing women dancing and all you people flipping. My eyes will lie to me.
Yeah.
He used to close his eyes and listen to the show and stop. It's B flat. I said, I always B flat. No. But he would just pick a voice out and say, come over here, play that note, play that you're singing this wrong note. So it was that intense, but that joyous as well. You know, everybody was scared to death of him. But they really made this the tightest show. And when, you know, every night, standing ovation, screaming, people just screaming, you know. It's an amazing vehicle. And it brought so many people to theater, which just paved the way for Les Mis. After us, they broke our records. Then Phantom, they broke Les Mis records. I mean, it is such an important part of musical theater history because like I said in the very beginning, more people came to this show who would never normally go to a show. Yeah. You know, these women were dragging their husbands to the show and they're, you know, I remember we talked earlier about baseball and football. I remember doing playoff games. I'd be standing out there and you could see this is, and Cats 4, when people had phones or little tablets, you see this blue glow when the lights went out. These guys were watching the finals of some game, whether it's a hoop or whatever. So, but then we got them, man. These guys were standing, they were screaming, they were, you know, and again, it paved the way to go see other shows because it was like, oh, wow, theater's fun. Yeah. And that the show made theater fun. It made you think about things. And like you say, the wrong cat died. Many people feel that way, you know, of who do you relate to? Yeah.
And
in the show.
And there's so many characters, so many different ways to interpret it, so many ways to see it. I mean, I had argued that I don't think kids should go, but then you see that if you take out the backstories, it's like from a kid's eyes, it's also kind of a mesmerizing show. So it is, I mean, there's a reason it's still around 40 plus years later and still going and probably will be for another 40. Which is kind of cool to see. And I enjoy it, but I loved hearing it. Now I'm like dying to see the show in German. After hearing from you, so.
There's some out there. I think there's some stuff on YouTube. Yeah. Okay. But it is, but again, it transcends to any language, it is a journey.
Yeah. Well, dancing's dancing. So even if you don't understand a word of it, that's kind of how I felt when I saw it the first time. Even if you're not following the story or anything, it's still kind of mesmerizing to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
it's entertaining.
Yeah.
It's too. And, hearing some of the backstories from now that Gillian Lynn has passed, people were posting on social media about Gillian and stuff they said to her and stuff they did, what she, this part's the Jellicle Ball. It's 9.5 minutes of pure dancing. You know what I mean? The big boys have a section, the kittens have a section, the women, ladies Latin, the Jellicle, each section had a name. So you could, when you're rehearsing that, so you knew where we were and doing certain parts. But when you hear the stories of what she did and trying to tell the story and how she saw it, and it's just so much fun. And it brings, when you have a purpose to do a step because you know where it comes from. There's certain steps where you're wiggling your butt, and she called it dirty bottoms or nasty bottoms. It was great, but you know why you're doing it at that given time, and to watch these. I mean, I came from Florida after doing Chorus Line with Tom Reed, and he said, I need you to come up here and audition for Cats. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I actually closed the show on Sunday, flew on Monday, and had my audition on Tuesday. It was like the gods were in my favor. And when I got there, I could not imagine what I was in for. I walked into a stage, and I've never auditioned with 200 other guys.
Wow.
And they said they saw like 3,000 people for this company.
Yeah, everyone.
And then everybody wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And dude, the people that I saw dancing, I was like, taxi, get me out of here. These guys were phenomenal. And the voices and to be one of 32 in the original company of this tour was a godsend. I mean, and there were so many talented people, and to see the cast we had were so good. And it was just amazing. And it was more when they put our company together. Jimmy Walski, who was our dance captain, was telling us they actually put the company together for the people we were also, not just the talent that we had, and there were amazing people in the company. And to encapsulate, to bring this all to a close, these amazing people gave their time for this benefit then, and now. Yeah. And they're just great people.
And I'll include the link in the description. So, there's still an opportunity to donate and still a chance to give back. So if you can, please do that.
And like I say, when I was doing my posts is, look, any amount is the perfect amount. You don't have to, we're all up against the wall here. So you don't have to try to save the world. We all know that $5 goes a long way when it has to.
Exactly.
So it doesn't have to be $1 million. So whatever anybody could give is perfect.
Yeah. Well, BK, thank you so much for coming on and enlightening me about the Germany production and sharing all these stories. It's been amazing to have you on.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, nice to meet you. And hopefully I'll come east and we'll go watch a Knicks Pacers game or something.
Yeah, exactly. For all the people listening to this, I have no idea what we're talking about. I love it. Yes, we will find some sporting event to attend hopefully soon. So thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Wrong Cat Died, and check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.